My name is Tara, and I am a fifth-year PhD student in the Integrated Biomedical Sciences PhD program. Specifically, I am studying neuroscience, and I became interested in neuroscience when I was in high school. I was in a biology class, and we saw a video about these studies, split brain studies done by Michael Gazzaniga. And if you don't know what that is, I really encourage you to look it up because it's so interesting. And I just became obsessed with the brain. I thought this black box that we don't know anything about controls everything about our lives. And I wanted to know more. It lit a spark in me that I knew that I wanted to pursue. So after high school, I attended Trinity University here in San Antonio because of their neuroscience major. And my first experience with research was actually here at the Health Science Center in the lab of Ben Eaton doing synapse development and genetics in fruit flies. And so, fruit flies don't have very big brains, but I still got really interested in synapse formation and the idea that these tiny areas could be so important for everything we think and do, and really connect to that black box. And so after college, I actually joined Teach for America and I taught high school science here in San Antonio. But I really missed that spark I felt when I was learning about the brain. So I decided to come back to school and started the PhD program studying neuroscience here at UT Health San Antonio. And I have been able to continue teaching in a way while I've been in graduate school with TA opportunities and also mentoring rotation students and undergrads in the lab, and then also through our kind of new women in science group, Wisdom, which I was really had the honor to be the founding president of. So I've gotten to keep teaching a little bit, but I've gotten to also continue to learn. And so this was like a best of both worlds situation for me. So I want to tell you a little bit about what it's like to be a student in the Integrated Biomedical Sciences program. Typically, for the first 2-ish years, you split your time between taking classes and working and doing research in the lab. So your first semester, you do rotations in a few different labs to see which lab you like the best and where you want to do your research for the entirety of grad school. And then once you're done with your classes, after about 2 years, you take an exam called the qualifying exam. And it has a written component, which is typically a research proposal, and then also an oral component where you're in a room with a panel of faculty members, and they can ask you questions. I was told about 3 different things. Anything you learned in your classes, anything you learned or anything about your research, and then anything else. So this is kind of a daunting test, and it's a tough point in graduate school. But once you get through it, you typically don't take any classes anymore, and you can focus on your research in the lab. And usually, you do research for about 3 more years, depending on how productive you are and how quickly your project gets going. So that makes a total of about 5 years to PhD. So at the end of doing all this research, you write this big dissertation, about 200 pages, about all the research you've done. And then you have to defend it. You do an oral defense in front of typically your department or the public or whoever wants to come. And they ask you, or you present your research and they ask you questions and you defend your research. And so then you can get your PhD. And after a PhD, usually, a lot of PhDs will go on to do something called a postdoc, which is another training position, because 5 years wasn't enough, to work in another lab and do some more research. And it's a really similar position to your position in grad school, except you're kind of supposed to know what you're doing. So after that, there's a few things that you can do. One of them is go into industry, work for a pharmaceutical or biotech company, or you can become a professor yourself and either focus on teaching or focus on research, which is kind of what I want to do. I'd like to run my own lab someday. So what I've been doing since I got here has been a lot of research, and this research has um, I really came in wanting to do something that, or learn more about something that was really poorly understood, to kind of shine a light on that black box, that really, you know, interesting thing that really lit that spark in me. So I've been studying cells in the brain called oligodendrocytes, and these cells are a type of cell called glia. And glia is from a Greek word meaning glue. So these cells have been thought to be these kind of passive glue cells that just hold these all important neurons together. And the neurons can communicate with each other, and the glia is just the glue. But I actually found that these oligodendrocytes can communicate with neurons as well. And they can actually fire action potentials, which is thought to be a unique property of neurons. But these cells, these glia, can actually do this too. So the purpose and the mechanism of this glial action potential is not well understood, just a few years old idea, and it's still quite controversial in the field of neuroscience. So still kind of got some questions. I started out thinking that I wanted to do research to learn more about this black box, but I think it turned out that the field is maybe more confused after since I've gotten here. But this is great because then I will never run out of things to learn, and I'll never uh, have to worry about figuring out the entirety of the black box that is the brain. So thank you for listening.